welcome back to the Life, Liberty, and Pursuit of Happiness Project. I'm glad you came back to join us. Today, we have with us Kim May, who is an author. Full disclosure, she and I grew up around each other, so we have known each other for a long time. Kim is an author. So, in addition to being a writer, Kim is also the event coordinator at our local used bookstore, independent used bookstore. And she's a mostly retired stage actor. In 2013, she won the Named Lands Poetry Contest with a haiku. And in 2014, went from being unpublished to Science Fiction Writers of America Award eligible in 24 hours. Her short stories have appeared in multiple volumes of Fiction River, as well as in the Eclipse Phase anthology. Her debut novel, The Moonflower, came out in 2017, and her sequel to that, The Closed Game, was released about a year ago. So, Kim, welcome.
Hi, thanks for having me.
Yeah, my pleasure. Thank you for taking time out of your day. I know you are really busy, what with the bookstore and writing and everything else that you have going on. Okay, first question. And maybe I should have asked you this before we started recording.
Uh-oh.
Um, the title of your series, The Blank War. I have no idea how to pronounce that word.
Greek is hard.
It is.
I'm pretty sure it's Oneiroi, but I don't speak fluent Greek, so...
Oneiroi. Okay. All right. No, that's kind of what I thought, but there's vowels in there that I'm just like, I feel like I'm not pronouncing that vowel if I say Oneiroi. So, okay. Good. I feel better about myself there then. Although I have to be honest, I actually thought, until I looked it up to see what that word meant. I just finished reading The Closed Game a couple days ago. I was like, well, I'm going to be talking with you, so it's a good excuse to read your book and move it up on my priority list. Because, like most readers, I have a to be read pile that's like, multiple feet high. And this was in my pile, and I'm like, oh no, I gotta pull that out and read it. Gonna talk to Kim. Um, so even though I'd read the first book like a year ago, I just this weekend looked up how to or what that word is, and I felt foolish because I know your book deals with. I don't know if the Greek pantheon or Greek gods is the right word, because you bring in the Titans and that kind of thing, in addition to the regular gods. But for some reason, I just assumed that word was Japanese for some reason. And I read the definition, I'm like, no, that's Greek. That makes a lot more sense. Because I'd been expecting because I thought that word was Japanese, I was expecting Japanese gods or something to come into it. I'm like, nope, this is all Greek so far. I don't know what's going on. Then I found that word. I'm like, oh, okay. I'm just way off.
Yeah, I'm saving the Japanese for a different series.
Perfect. I look forward to that. I actually was talking with my sister over the weekend as well, and we were both kind of lamenting how you know people are so familiar with the Greek gods that it's easy to write about them, and there isn't as much dealing with other gods. We've got obviously the Marvel universe, deals with Thor and Odin and the Norse gods, but I mean for the most part, there's really not a lot of exposure of non-European gods to Western culture. There's a little bit of exposure through anime, and then there's a couple movie versions or a movie version of shoot, I can't even remember now what it's called. one of my best friends would like kick me for this because I can't remember, but Journey to the West or something like that.
Oh,
Like there's a little bit of that that's come into Western culture, but not much.
mm-hmm.
So, so I look forward to book 3 coming out of this series, and look forward to when you start bringing in another series with the Japanese as well. Um, how many books do you expect to be in the Oneiroi War series?
It's going to be a 5-book series.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
I was wondering, like, got through the second book here, and I'm like, okay, I feel like there's a lot to be wrapped up if it's a trilogy, but I didn't know, so that makes sense.
Yeah, there's a lot coming.
I can imagine. And how are you doing with book 3?
I haven't started it.
Okay.
I've got a standalone historical novel that I'm going to try and get traditionally published. So I'm writing that now. And then while that's making the rounds with all the agents and editors that I'm going to submit it to, then I will finish writing all of the books in the Oneiroi War and do kind of a rapid release, since everybody's will have been waiting very patiently at that point.
Okay, and the Oneiroi War series is self-published?
Mm-hmm. Yep, it's through my company.
Okay, yep. Okay, so that's interesting. I knew that was kind of what you've done independently or through your own company, and then some of your works have been like your short stories have been more traditionally published. I knew you kind of were doing both there,
Mm-hmm.
which I find interesting. I know for some people that really works well, and some people really have strong feelings about just going one way or the other.
Mm-hmm.
So, how are you finding um, trying to keep that? Or I guess I shouldn't really say keeping a balance, but how's that working for you? Like doing traditional publishing with some things and self-publishing or independently publishing other things.
It works well for me because it gives me more flexibility. If the traditional market isn't interested in what I want to write, then I can publish it myself. If like if an editor needs a last minute short story to fill an anthology, then I can just say, okay, yeah, I mean, I've already got a toe in that market, so it's not going to be weird if I'm suddenly leaving traditional or indie publishing for a while to do some traditional projects. It's nice having both sides and having income from both sides.
Yeah, that makes sense. I think that would be nice. Um, I just published a book of poetry on Amazon a few weeks ago, and I will admit looking to and I don't have anything prose wise close to being published or ready to publish. Um, but that thought of going through the process of the traditional publishing process of submissions and agents and all that just seems overwhelming.
It can be. And there's a lot of trust involved with traditional publishing because you're giving your fictional child to someone else and hoping that they do right by it. Uh, Sometimes it works out, sometimes it doesn't. It's kind of also, one of the nice things about indie publishing is that you can make it look exactly the way you want inside and out, and promote it as much as you feel is necessary for it, or not publish or not promote it at all, and just throw it out into the world and see what happens.
Yeah, for sure. At this point, I've kind of just thrown it out into the world without much promotion or anything, and I have all of one sale of my book so far, but it felt good to get that first one.
Mm-hmm.
So, um, Let's see. So one thing I found really interesting, and I put this on myself for not kind of, I think if I'd read the back of the book here, I think I probably would have figured it out a little bit better. Um, I was really thrown when I started reading this book, and I'm like, oh, this is a completely different protagonist through this book. I was not expecting that. The protagonist from the first book, like, comes in a little bit on a couple of phone calls, and that's about it.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm not going to get into any spoilers or anything here, but I just thought that was a very interesting way to go with the book. So why did you decide to do it that way with different protagonists? I'm assuming, and maybe I'm assuming too much, but I'm assuming the future books will also have a different protagonist for each book.
Yeah, there'll be a different main protagonist for each book. And in fact, since you've read book 2, you've already met 2 of the future protagonists.
Ooh.
Just leave that dangling. uh,
Oh, go ahead.
I mean, it's something that has definitely thrown some viewers, some readers, because it's seen more in romance series than it is in fantasy. Uh, but it's something that I felt was really necessary for this series and for who Sarah is and what he's doing, to show more of the people he's worked with and how these events are affecting them, in addition to all of the gods and denizens in the Demos and Iri,
Okay,
just to
yeah.
give a broader scope to
Mhm.
everything that's going on.
Yeah, and I can see where it works. It just, like I said, it threw me, and I think in some ways it's kind of a daring thing because readers, they get attached to characters and then they leave, and then it's like, oh, it's like Game of Thrones or Song of Ice and Fire, where Eddard dies at the end of the first book. Spoilers for anyone who hasn't read those or seen Game of Thrones. Eddard dies at the end of the first book, and people are going, "Wait a second! I thought this was the main dude. What the heck?" Um, so,
At
but
least I'm
yeah,
not killing anyone yet.
yet
Yes.
operative word. um, yeah, no, I can see where there might be some death. I mean, war is in the title of the series, so war does tend to imply the coming of death.
Yep. And the Greek pantheon is known for being quite vengeful and
True, true. I like that you're keeping kind of in the realm of the Greek pantheon, but you're not just dealing with Zeus and Poseidon and
mm-hmm.
kind of the main uh, gods of the Greek pantheon that we've all seen done many ways, and that's not to criticize those who are still using them in their writings, but it's nice to see something kind of refreshing. Aphrodite made an appearance in this book, and but wasn't like a main player or anything.
Mm-hmm.
So it's nice to kind of focus on some of those smaller denizens.
Yeah, the lesser gods or
Yeah,
expanded pantheon.
yeah, yeah. I
Mm-hmm.
like that you're doing that.
Me too.
Um,
I agree that the Olympians have been kind of overdone, and there's so much in the popular culture that's now considered canon for who they are and what they do, that it's nice having a mostly blank slate.
Yeah, no, I hadn't even thought about it from that perspective much, but yeah, that totally makes sense. Kind of gives you a little bit more freedom to um, kind of do your own thing and not have people going, "Oh, that's not right. No, you shouldn't have done that." What were you thinking? Kind of reminds me, and I have no idea if you've read this book at all, um, but The Child Thief, I think it is, by the artist Brahm.
I have it, but I haven't read it.
Okay. It's a very different, very dark take on like the story of Peter Pan. I read it several years ago. I honestly don't even know if I still have my copy of it or if I brought it in to your used bookstore. Uh, that's probably what I did with it if I don't still have it, because that's really what I do with books. I recycle them through the used bookstore. But um, that was, like I said, definitely a different take on the Peter Pan story. So that's kind of what that made me think of. That's how that came in. Sorry. Um,
I will say it's kind of hard watching or reading other people's interpretations of the Lesser Pantheon now that I have my own. I was watching Blood of Olympus, and about halfway through, the Oniri come in, and they are not my Oniri. It pissed me off so much. It's like, how are you doing this to these people?
Oh, that must be interesting. I can see that. I can see where that would be um, something you'd think and feel, because when you write, you're taking those characters and making them your own. Like um, you referred to the book kind of as your fictional child, and there's a bond that you develop there.
Mm-hmm.
So for people to do something different that doesn't fit with your canon for what you're writing would be definitely interesting. I think we see that differences like that a lot. I won't say, I know how people that I won't assign feelings to people, but we see the vampire mythos. Like every series that has vampires, like there's differences in the mythos, and you know, there's the whole debate about whether vampires should sparkle, and uh, lots of different things, and um, but like you're saying, things can be oversaturated, and so I was reading a thing about publishing, I think a couple of years ago, and the author was referring to using the example of using vampires in a story or a series, and is going, if you're trying to traditionally publish right now, if you've got vampires, it's not going to happen no matter how good your story is, because it's all just so saturated. Like everybody's been writing vampires for like 5 years, and so the trad publishing is just hard when the market is um, filled with a topic.
Mm-hmm.
So like you were kind of saying, that's kind of one of the advantages, I think, of publishing independently, is it doesn't matter. If you want to do it, you can do it, and
Mm-hmm.
you don't have those gatekeepers in the way.
Yeah, I mean, there's still lots of people reading vampire books. I love vampire books. And yeah, I mean, there's a market. There are people who will buy it and read it and love it.
Yeah. I recently joined I'll admit, I spend way too much time on Facebook, probably. Um, there's a couple of groups that I joined recently, and one of them I joined mostly because there's interesting things that are brought up in the group that I can see and go, oh, I can tweak that and maybe work it into my story that I'm writing in this way, and it's like I use it for kind of inspiration. And so I joined this one group that deals more with like the Fae, and then there's a similarly named group about vampires. And I love vampires, and the urban fantasy series that I'm planning will have vampires, but probably not till like book 3 or 4, just to kind of give some breathing room for others. Um, and after I joined that group, I was kind of surprised because the vast majority of that group, the posts in that group, seemed to be either showing off cosplay or talking about favorite books and movies. And so it's very different than this Fae group that I joined. It was a very similar name, but it's definitely a popular thing. So, um, okay. So one thing that I thought was really interesting in your second book here, um, and I'm going to make sure to phrase this in the form of a question because I feel like I'm doing a lot of talking here and I'm interviewing you. I want you to be doing most of the talking. So I'm going to make sure to make this a question, not a statement. Um, so I'm just going to start with a statement. So, with being kind of surprised at the switch between um, protagonists, I don't want to get into spoilers here, but the main character, um, her dad is a drag queen, and there are a lot of other drag queens that are characters um, in the book, and that was very much a surprise for me, considering the first book was primarily dealing with art in a lot of ways, and then we jump from art to drag and dance. The dance was a very important part of the book as well, thematically. So um, I do. Do you feel like that not just switching the protagonist, but kind of going from art form to art form? Um, do you feel like that might be a challenge for your readers?
I have never thought about it as being a challenge for readers. I mean, and it's always something that I've intended to do with the series from the beginning, to have it focus on a different art form in each book and have each main protagonist be a different type of artist, someone who expresses through a different medium than we've seen in the previous books. Uh, but it's my job as a writer to make it understandable and to make the challenges and joys of each art form come through and be understandable. So if it's confusing to readers or jarring, then it's all on me for not doing my job right. Uh,
I wasn't trying to say you hadn't done a good
I,
job.
no,
I was just saying if I'd read the back of the book before I started reading it, I wouldn't have been as surprised.
mm,
So that was my bad for not reading that little back cover there. Um, and I think you do a really good job of bringing in the different art forms, um, because my talents, if you will, I'd like to think I have some talent uh, artistically is in writing.
mm,
Um, I can't paint or draw or sculpt or do anything visual to save my life. I've done a little bit of dance, but most of my dancing has been um, ballroom, like waltz or swing dancing. And so it's a very different dance style than a lot less complicated in some ways than the ballet and other types of dance that are referred to in the closed game here. But I think you've done a really good job because even for me not being aware of or educated in like the different terminology and things like that, like as you're describing the artwork in the first book or in this one, the dance, I may not know what every term is, like as you're describing um, you know, oh, she did a plie and then went into a can't think of the terms, but anyway, like a pirouette. There we go. A
Mm-hmm.
plie into a pirouette. Like I know what a pirouette is, but most of these other terms, like I have no idea what they mean. But it didn't jar me. It didn't take me out of the story. Like I was able to just kind of gloss over it and go, okay, I don't completely understand this sentence, like to the point where I can visualize what this dancer is doing. Um, and so someone who does understand that is going to get more out of those little parts. But it didn't take away, I don't think, from my enjoyment of the book. I still understood what was happening, and I think you did a really great job of weaving that in a way that it's not jarring or distracting or leaving people going, "Oh, I don't understand this, so I can't read this."
I'm glad. Yeah, I tried to keep the terminology to a minimum. Having danced for many years and actually been tested in written exams on uh, ballet French terminology, spelling and everything. It's really bad. It's so hard. I tried not to use a lot of that, except for the more widely known terms like pirouette. Instead of saying, "Oh, she did a grand jeté," it's like, okay, she did a leap, just to keep it more accessible to the non-dancers. But I still wanted to put a few words here and there in for those who do dance,
Yeah, like I
give
said, I think
them the specifics and that grounding. And yes, she really is a dancer. She knows the right words for it, type of thing.
yeah, I think you did a great job. So credit to you for that. Um, Another thing that I thought you did a really great job with, and again, I want to try and not be spoilery here, so I'm going to use some vague terms, but as the author, you're going to know what I'm talking about. Um, so I have to say, like the last like three chapters, where um, the protagonist and her dad have their big heated discussion. Um, and then like through the end of the book, as you know, that changes their relationship, and you know, the main character's kind of dealing with the ramifications of that, and it's kind of closing this book, and maybe doing a little bit of setup for the next one. Those few chapters there, I don't know what it is, 20, 30 pages. That's got to be the my favorite thing of yours that I've ever read. I think you did an amazing job with bringing in the emotion in those chapters, and really like um, I mean, you've done the work through the book to develop the relationship, but really there's the whole emotional payoff of that relationship right there. And I really think that was just masterfully done. I was really impressed with that.
Thank you. Those were the hardest chapters for me to write. Uh, Anytime I'm having to do any scene where there's a good paternal relationship or uh, resolution of a conflict uh, with a father figure, that's always been hard for me because I do not have a good relationship with my dad, and I never have. In fact, he's no longer a part of my life by my choice. Uh, so trying to understand that and then convey it in the book was a big challenge.
Eh, you know, I will just say good for you for that. Then, um, I um, I was looking at it more from the perspective of it probably being a challenge, um, because You don't have kids of your own.
That too.
Um, and so I was thinking about it more from that perspective and being a challenge. But like I said, you write it so well. And then I hadn't even thought about like the paternal relationship there. So um, that's even more credit for you. So that's fabulous. You did an amazing job.
Thank you.